Hi guys, I'm Cheyenne and I'm doing my research on the trauma-informed classrooms. So a trauma-informed classroom is also known as TIC. It's an environment where children who have troubled backgrounds can be as successful as their other students. With the research that I've done, they have policies in play where I found a thing where they had the pamphlet of teaching the teachers how to not be biased and to understand what's going on rather than just blame it on something else. So teachers would be able to recognize like prenatal stress, birth trauma, early hospitalization, abuse, and neglect. Be able to recognize that those are risk factors and how they contribute to students' behavior. So each thing has different behaviors connected to them. So one of the ones was birth trauma can sometimes lead to ADHD. So instead of saying, oh, this child is just having problems, you could say, oh, because of their birth trauma, this is why they are having their problems. So that way you have a causation. And what kind of trauma are we looking at? They're single incident, so usually it's an accident, so something happens. Complex trauma, abuse, neglect, grief and loss of a parent or grandparent, something like that. Chronic stress, poverty, incarceration of the same thing, parent, grandparent, siblings, bullying and prolonged stress and multiple traumatic events. One of the many research things that I found, they try to focus trauma-informed classrooms in places like Chicago and St. Louis, where there's a lot of violence. And so, for the traumatic events, some of them, I was amazed at how many of them that have trauma-informed classrooms focus theirs on death and children seeing other people being shot or stabbed or their own parents or something like that being hurt. So, what the big deal is that students will all feel safe and supported. Without this, they may never succeed. Students may have educational problems at the forefront, but really be having emotional difficulties. Like we talked about before, a student may have ADHD, but it's not because the kid has this actual disease. It's because they have some sort of trauma that was even before during the birthing process or even during their prenatal when they weren't even out of the womb yet. And another thing that I saw in here was they found out if a whole school did it together, other than just like a couple teachers, if everybody worked together, that all the students thrived better. And they all thrived together. So some of the do's and don'ts. It looks like when it comes to the do's, you're just creating a safe place, establish predictability. So keeping a routine, doing the same things every single day, building trust. So letting the students talk to you about what's going on, and not immediately just throwing in more chaos with that, but you still have your legalities that come along with that. Offer them choices. So instead of saying you have to do this, giving them a couple options, giving them it says that if you give more than two or three, they become overwhelmed. It's usually just stick between two or three, and then stay regulated. So if you have a morning routine, stick to that morning routine. If you have a handshake in the morning, stuff like that. And then the only don't was don't just assume behaviors and yell at them. Have a quiet space for them to calm down. So some of the management tips that I found were just have clear expectations, form relationships, use humor in redos and compromise instead of punishment, and then praise them when they are doing good. So if you have a child that constantly is doing bad, praising them when they do good does better than trying to punish them every time. And then validate their feelings. So if they are angry about something or they are upset about something, explain, I understand that you feel this way, but this is what we should be doing. um, Not that I've seen very many teachers yell, but they say that that's like a number one. Don't do that, and then don't do sticker charts and reward systems because the children that don't have the problems are constantly going to be doing well, and then it just kind of points out which children have the issues. And so they said to kind of do that, and then don't take away recess as a consequence because that's the time these kids that have problems they can go out and they can play and they can have fun with their friends. So taking that away as a punishment is not what they wanted to do for the trauma informed classroom. And avoid embarrassment and shame. So don't call them out in front of other students when they're doing anything wrong. Talk about it after class or whenever you can. So what do these classrooms look like? So they're routine and consistent. They're calm places for children to calm down rather than punish. So they said to, put like an area where you can put, some like those flat, cushiony things that have the numbers and the letters on them where they can pull them out and put them back in, something like that. Talking about emotions with books and play and other learning activities, journal writing, painting, and other expressive activities. So it kind of looks like an art classroom, but not really. They have some other tips too here. When one of the researches that I found, they tested different procedures, organizational and environmental influences. So this kind of goes back to what they look like. Um, they they were changing the arrangement of desks, so if you had desks closer together in a like in an assembly of four, but enough room to walk around, that they did a lot better. And creating safe environments in the classroom will keep us create a stable environment for those suffering from the trauma, and all the children will cooperate together than this side versus this side. And then the trauma informed approach, the guy that kind of brought it all together, Jim Walters, he says, keep in mind that this is not a program or about those kind of kids um, that believe that they are embracing empathy as they acknowledge individuals as each having unique experiences, and those experiences, if properly activated, can strengthen the village. So it's just saying if you everybody recognizes it, that everybody can do well to each other. So here's kind of what I was talking about with the desks. If they're in neat, orderly rows, they make movement easier, but grouping them together, it produces cooperative learning, building class community, organizing and decorating the classroom. It makes it really awesome because they're sensitive to their atmosphere. And then creating traditions in the classroom, specifically in this article, doing a morning tradition at the end of the day, so it's just always doing the pledge in the morning, reading a quote or talking with students about what they think it means. Those were good tasks that they had done, and creating class meetings to encourage students to work on problem solving. So if you're having a problem, say, this is my problem, what should we all do? And then have everybody kind of talk about it. And then following an agenda would allow the students that are suffering from the said trauma, they would have consistency. So if you have an agenda, then they can look at it and they can expect what's on there every day. And then there are my references.